Okay, guys, so we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Dungeon Musings YouTube channel. My name is Kevin Madison, and I'll be your friendly referee today, because today we are carrying on. Well, we're not carrying on. We're going to be reflecting back on the first year of our ongoing campaign playing Mongoose Publishing's Outstanding Traveler 2nd Edition, with which we have been playing the Reach Adventure 5, the Borderland Run module. And with me today to reflect on this first year in the Trojan Reach are the stars of this campaign. I'll go the order I've got you guys on the screen here. Why don't you tell us who you are and who you're playing in this campaign. First up, I've got this almost in order of seniority here. First up, we've got James.
Right, hey, I'm James, and I'm playing Captain Gani. Or as his family call him, Ganemakur Eneri Irkin Managud Daily Shuglama. But apparently the rest of the crew struggle with that one a bit, so he's Captain Gani.
Nice. Next up is Graham.
Hi, I'm Graham. I am playing Dane Loverick, your friendly retired Black Ops Imperial Marine.
Very nice. Next up is David.
Hi everyone, I'm David, and I'm playing Dr. Ilyas Abdel, who's currently suffering from a slight case of physician heal thyself.
Yes, David is taking the role-playing to the extreme by showing up for the session ill today, so
no.
We appreciate him being a trooper. Next up is Jeffrey.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeff, and I play Alonso, the journalist, reporter, and author.
And is there any other secrets he's got? Any skeletons of the...
Nothing.
No, not anything else?
Totally normal person, no issues.
And then last, but certainly not least, is Carl.
Hello, I am Carl. I play Anchor Guvel, who is an ex-Imperial Navy Varger and the best pilot in the subsector.
Very nice. So this is, at the time of recording, we are 24 sessions of actual play into the campaign, and we plus one session of our character creation with it. For those who are new to the channel, what we like to do often with these long-term campaigns is at the year mark, take a chance to chat with the players and take any questions that folks in chat might have, and just reflect on how the campaign has been in the first year of it. I can tell you that of those 24 sessions, it makes up roughly 66 hours of play, which does not include the character generation session, which means that we are well in excess of spending more than an hour and a half for every page of the actual adventure. So, our crew has traveled 14 parsecs thus far. They have visited 6 worlds in which they've had significant impacts. They've only had one firefight, though there have been a couple more instances of violence. The Traveler campaign, this represents for me the longest running Traveler campaign I've run. I was a latecomer to Traveler. I never played it when I was a kid. It was, that's not true. We did play Traveler of the New Era, although I think there are some who would say that wasn't really Traveler. At least I remember the Challenge magazine letters column being filled with people who were saying that. But it certainly is the longest running Traveler. Jeff and I, with our buddy Steve, had played Traveler for a while before, but 24 sessions is certainly longer than what that campaign went, which was also set in the exact same region. For these kind of games, or these kinds of overviews, what I like to do is for me to shut up at some point and hear from the players. But one of the things I'd like to talk about first is sort of what was coming beforehand, because one of our other retrospectives we did recently, I was thinking about the Fridays, and I couldn't remember what we played in previous, what filled this slot on the channel previously, and I couldn't remember on this one either, so I went back. Well, the game that immediately preceded this as a kind of ongoing game was our Flames of Freedom game that James and Ingolf and I played. And before that, for almost a year, we played Fantasy Flight's Legend of the Five Rings, which was James and Sean and I. And then before that, we played Cult, which was Mo, who has unfortunately passed away 2 years ago now, Carl, and Sean. And that one was ongoing for about 6 months to 8 months. So for this, Sundays have been a fairly regular session with the same people, as opposed to sort of the pickup sessions we do in a lot of our other games. But this one has been, over the past year, the most consistent. For if we've got something scheduled for Traveler, we pretty much always play it. I don't think we've missed any sessions, and we haven't had any like filler games for the Sunday. I might have missed one because of my vacation, but other than that, we've been able to play almost every time, and we've rarely been down to less than 4. Like, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 sessions where we had 4 players, but otherwise it's mostly been 5 players or more. So it's been a full crew for most of that time. I'm going to talk more about the game and the adventure itself a little later. But first thing let's hear from the players first and talk about what experience you guys had with Traveler before this session or this campaign. Because I think there's a few of you who did have extensive experience with this. Some of you guys had experience with similar games like Cepheus or, those brand or those line of games. But I'll go the order I've got you guys on the screen here. James, what was your previous Traveler experience before playing this one?
Well, Traveler was probably one of the 3 main games I played when I was a teenager. So we played it quite a lot back in the day. And then... so that was probably 25% of my gaming time was on that.
Oh wow.
Probably. And then I ran it a couple of times more recently, so about 2-3 years ago.
Which version did you
that
use?
Was a big rep. I ran Mongoose second.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Obviously originally it was classic.
Nice. And what about you, Graham?
Traveller. So I think it's safe to say Traveller is possibly, I think we've all got our forever game, and I think Traveller could be my forever game. So I played it as my 3rd RPG I ever played after AD&D First Edition and RuneQuest White Cover First Edition. So that was 81. It was the Little Black Books. We played a lot of Traveller. And really, really enjoyed it. Since then, I've played every 2d6 every 2d6 version of Traveller. So I've played Traveller, some of the deluxe Travellers, Mega Traveller. I have played T&E, although I think it may have just been me at that point. T4. So we played this sort of T4 engine, Mark Miller's Traveller to T4, and I've got friends who have got, and I've got PDFs of the T5. I just haven't played it. We didn't ever do GURPS, although some of the background setting stuff for the GURPS stuff is really, really good. We didn't do GURPS D20.
Traveller D20.
Yeah, sorry, Traveller D20. Although, actually, again, some of the setting gateway stuff in there is pretty good. And now we're into Mongoose. And I've written a little bit. I've written a scenario which I've published for Cepheus. And I tend to gravitate a bit more towards Cepheus these days than Mongoose Traveller, much as I like all of them. So a big player and played a lot of it, and probably my forever game.
Nice. What about you, David?
I'm going to break the streak. This is my first time playing Traveller ever.
Hey!
Just before the pandemic, so I think like 2019 or 2018, one of my groups at the time, we did a few sort of sci-fi one-shot taster session things, where we just tried different sci-fi systems because we tended to play more fantasy at the time. We tried Traveller, and we were going to do one short, but everyone bounced off really hard during character creation. Like one of my players, when he had to roll for whether he got into university and then how well he did, whether he would get like a 1st or 2-1, he was like, this is too much like real life. I just can't handle this.
Wow.
So we did the character like the live, but then it never went anywhere because everyone was just like, nah, this is not for us. So yeah, for me this is all new, and I think it was very daunting at first, just because there's having just listened to Graham go about like just the history of the many editions and offshoots, and I wasn't even aware that there were versions that didn't use 2d6. So I feel it can be a game that, because of its storied and rich history, can just be a bit daunting if you're starting off in it. But this is a great group to learn the ropes. For me, first time playing it, but loving it.
It's also worth in spite of the setting being such a lovingly detailed thing and largely remaining the same since the creator Mark Millar created it. Mark Miller, sorry, not Millar. The thing is that it has always been a matter of, from my understanding, make it yours, right? Like, this is what it says in the book, but do not feel like you need to get it correct, which is a very different. There is that stuff in modern gaming books nowadays, but that has always been a matter of your Traveler universe is your universe. There's no one's going to come and double check your canon stuff, which is really different from a lot of other similarly detailed things. Like BattleTech has a similar lineage to that too, but there is a right and a wrong answer as far as BattleTech fans are concerned with respect to history of different things. Even when there's a source book that has a manufacturing locations of different specific parts of your mech stuff, you will hear in chat from the people who are like, this is wrong. It's cool that Traveler has that. You know what? All this stuff is out there for you to make hay out of, but none of it's canon. Make it your own. So we were talking about Warhammer, the experience of running Warhammer stuff previously, so that's what's led to this digression for those listening at home on my part. So Jeffrey, what about you?
So we played Traveler for one of our I don't know, what do you call those things? Gaming marathons, maybe?
Yeah. That was after you, Steve, and I had played for a bit.
Yeah. So right. So we played for a bit, the Pirates session. Then you brought it to that gaming marathon, and I think that's where it made the biggest impression on me, because I made a character, still one of my favorite characters I've played in any game. He was a stage magician, and kind of based on Job from Arrested Development. And so he was kind of a funny character, and he still contributed a lot to the adventure. And it was a very kind of not serious, but serious danger adventure. And it was kind of interesting to see how a character, how he could still contribute and be a big part of the story. And I really loved that aspect. And I think that Alonso is a little bit based on that idea of, you can make someone who's not a military or scientist character and still contribute in a space game in a fun way.
Yeah. And that's it's funny because for those who aren't familiar with the gaming marathons, we did this more so pre-COVID, but we would get together and play 16 hours of a game. We'd break for lunch, we'd break for dinner, but we would dedicate an entire day to just playing this one game. And Traveler was one of the ones we did for that. One of the interesting things in the course of that session too was seeing one of the players, so we had a couple of copies of the the Central Supply catalog, and he used it to outfit a man cave on the ship as opposed to doing anything else relating to the adventure. And that was a really important thing for his character to do. And this Traveler has this really, that's where I started realizing there's something about Traveler that just spending time in the setting is part of the fun of that game, is just inhabiting that world and doing shit in that world. Not the same necessarily, but in the same way that some games like The Sims, or other more buildy kind of games, things that don't, to be honest, appeal to me at all as a player. I'm a much more violent person, I guess, at heart, and I want there to be blowing up and fucking conflict. But it's cool that the game, that's one of the ways people play with the parts that make up this game. What about you, Carl?
So for me, I got into Traveler relatively, late compared to Dane and Gani. Graham and James. I I jumped into Traveler like when I was in college, and I went to a gaming store and I saw the cover of Mega Traveler, the box set, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. And so I picked up the box set, really fell in love with the universe. And then someone in our science fiction, like we had a science fiction gaming club, or we had a gaming club or some nerd club back in college, and they're like, oh, introduced me to Classic Traveler. So we played that. My first character did die in character creation. So
Yeah.
but since then I played Traveler, and it became, especially Mega Traveler. That's the system I started with. We ran a relatively long campaign, but with my group back, not at college but at home, and it was like intermittent during the holidays, and we'd have these big marathon sessions. And I think I've played like every incarnation. I'm trying to think if I've played every incarnation of Traveler, except for the T5, but I even played the T20, which we had a mini campaign of. We had, I like the GURPS. I like GURPS. I don't mind the GURPS system. I like the GURPS Traveler. I think the uniqueness about GURPS Traveler, for example, is they have like a interstellar war book. So like, the first Imperium, second Imperium transition, which I think is really neat. And then I was so happy to jump back into Traveler after a hiatus. I did TNA. We did TNE for a little bit too, the Traveler New Era, and then we played a lot of games with that GDW house system, Merc and Twilight 2000 and the like. And
Dark Conspiracy.
And we liked it. Yeah, we liked it, but I think we transitioned to Traveler the New Era rules, but we stayed because we were having an ongoing campaign in the Rebellion Mega Traveler area, so we never got to like the New Era. And I would never, and like Kevin said, if you didn't like the canon universe mega plot that they put out, i.e. the virus, then you could ignore it, which we did.
Yeah.
I did, and I backed Traveler ever since. I was so happy that Mongoose picked it up. I played some Mongoose 1 and Mongoose 2. I think it's really great, and they've been putting out some amazing products. They have some authors who have been around since T20 and Mega Traveler days that are contributing, and Mark Miller is behind it. I was supporting it. So I think, I really enjoy Traveler, and I'm really glad, and I'm running a Traveler campaign now, and I'm really glad to be a player in this game. So it's a great crew, and I'm having a lot of fun. So I think it's a great game. I think it's one of my top, I can't say top 3, but maybe top 5.
Yeah.
Maybe top 10. I play a lot of games as you might know. So, but I've been with Traveler for a long time, and it's one of my favorites.
So I didn't play the original. I didn't. Fringe had Mega Traveler, but we never really played it because it just, I don't know, we just never really got into it. And it was the New Era is my first one, and I can tell you the thing about it that, so for those who aren't familiar with the New Era, for one, I don't blame you because it's they are, GDW was a real time and place kind of publisher at the time where they were doing those that house system games that had the big like 320 page soft cover ones. I just loved all the games that came out around that time, even fucking Cadillac and Dinosaurs. But we got the New Era, and I'm not really one for game fiction. Like, I don't, I know there's a lot of people who like them, but like, if there is a chunk of game fiction that is part of the thing, I will always fucking skip it. I hate them. I'm like, just give me more game rules stuff in here. But one of the things that I do love is FASA's was one of the ones that did this before, where you would have in-universe stuff, where it would report, it would have back and forth in message boards from different characters or whatnot. And one of the things they did for, rather than having stories, they would have in-universe reporting in the New Era thing. And one of those things was a guy it was a report from someone who was talking about why they joined the Star Vikings. And that was the setup in that game, is that you were people who were going out and kind of like reintroducing civilization to the world. And the short story in it talked about how he was originally from a farming planet, and that him and his dad were out working one day, and guys showed up in a spaceship and landed, and they had space guns and just walked all the women off the planet and left. And the dad came back at the end of the day, and he said it broke him and he never recovered. And that's the reason he wanted to become a Star Viking, is to have no one ever be broken like that again. And it was just, for whatever reason, that little bit of story, I'm like, fuck Yes, that is so just the worst fucking thing I can imagine of just of why, of these islands in the blackness that just can have these terrible fucking things happen to them. And the two things I love about it is one is the sci-fi element of it, but it's so ground in the not the minutia, but like in the pathos and in the things that matter to any person, your connections with the people who matter to you and things like that, and the threat that comes to that. And Traveler, in my mind, the things I love about it is that it's about us in a way that I don't feel many other games are. When I'm running Traveler, I feel like we're more engaged with the matter of what these particular individuals are interested in. We get to learn their backstory in the course of the character generation. We get to see what you care about over the course of when we start playing, and it's the things that those grounded, realistic people are involved with in these extraordinary circumstances. And it's just not something that any other game that where you have like special powers or you have class abilities or spells or magic items or whatever, that just I feel like it puts some distance between us and as like human beings and the human condition and what's going on in the story that Traveler doesn't have any of. You're just playing people who have lived lives and find themselves in circumstances and are dealing with those things, and that is a thing that's always been since the New Era period. And then I didn't get back into Traveler until the Mongoose books, and I don't even remember why I picked them up. I think I might have been like it's one of those when G Plus was a thing. I may have fallen into a G Plus community and then just been like, oh wow, and I have just absolutely loved Traveler from that time. So this is your first experience, David, with this care gen system. Did you have experience with any other similar regimented, life path systems?
No, first time going through a life path system like this. Most of the other games I've played have sort of your classic, generate some ability scores, pick a class or spend some XP to get abilities and things like that. So this was the first time doing a proper sort of year by year, but like segment by segment, building up your past experiences. I'd heard of it before, partially often with the jokey bit of, it's one of the systems where you can die during character creation.
Yeah.
So it almost mentioned as a cautionary tale sometimes in some circles, but yeah, my first time going through the proper system.
So that's let me ask you this. So for you guys, with your characters you're playing in this campaign, the crew members or the travelers you're playing in this campaign, did you have an idea of what kind of character, apart from your species, obviously in your case, Carl, but did you have an idea of what type of character you wanted to try and like move towards while you're making the character, or did that just come out over the course of the care gen session?
I think that just came out through the course of character generation. Anchor, I wanted to make a Vargr and put him not in Vargr from Vargr space, but from Imperial space, because that's a thing. But then I think what was amazing that developed was like all this conspiracy stuff that was emergent through the course of character generation. It was just when you roll your events table, it just kept coming up. You get embroiled in this conspiracy, you get embroiled in this plot, and that now he's like a conspiracy theorist, and that totally brings. That's what I love, is the emergent character creation puts together ties with like some of the other player characters, like Jeff's character with Alonzo. Totally, he's an author. He does conspiracy theory, and then the Navy connection with James and Graham's character that really worked out how that character creation with no intention of what he was going to be like at the end. I mean, I was actually thinking of like there's this iconic picture in one of the books with this a Vargr admiral, he's got all the admiral epaulets and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh, he's going to be like a ship captain one of these days, and that never panned out. He got busted out of officer school and ended up being like a equivalent of a warrant officer, but had a great set of events that brought him to learn about all these player characters, and it makes sense for him to be with the crew, right? Because of that emergent character creation session.
Yeah, I think the characters feel more lived in than with some other systems I've played in the past, because you have to make these decisions and get, like I think Dr. Elias had the option of cheating in an exam or something. I can't quite remember the details. So right, they had to decide, like, would he go for it? Would he be tempted? So you were already making sort of more decisions about what is this character like than just putting down, oh, he's quite wise or he's quite smart. Those sort of things. They for me, they just feel more lived in when you start play.
Yeah, I would point out that like the character creation of this system is one of my favorites. I've used it modified sort of idea with my friends with local games that we've played when we make characters. I just love the whole life path thing of like bringing a character up to speed before you start the game. And so I took these rules that they use and I sort of just made up my own, but used them for just about any game I play, D&D, whatever, to give the characters more of a lived-in feel right at the start of the game. Maybe some friendships or partnerships that are ongoing rather than just, oh, you're all called to a tavern for an adventure, you know? So not that there's nothing wrong with that type of gameplay as well, but I like this version where I don't know, like you said, the character feels lived in. They feel, day one of role play, what kind of decisions they're likely to make.
I think that I want to hear from Graham and James in a second here, just before I forget my thought. The thing that I think is particularly great about the character gen in this game is when it is done all together. Like, not every game, I feel like there may be strategic or tactical reasons why you want to make a character together. So like, is somebody the healer? Like, do we not have a healer in this fucking party? And also because like some people are going to be more inclined towards that sort of storytelling bent and want to have the backstory to their character and want to have a sense of where they've come from and whatnot. And that's like, as a GM, I can tell you, one of my shortcomings is I fucking hate having to read backstory, and being part of the character generation and seeing everyone develop their characters and have it come together in that collaborative way has much more purchase for me, to be like, okay, now I'll remember this stuff, than to be like, awesome, I get to read fanfic about our campaign, and no fault to anybody who enjoys that stuff. Everyone enjoys the games in different ways. For me as a GM, it's just, I find a lot easier going through that process, seeing those bits come together in front of me, and then being able to draw on them going forward, or follow up with players and be like, hey, what do you think about X? Like, do you have any thoughts on what this is going to be like, or how it fits in with your character, and then be able to take that and incorporate it into the actual story. I really, really like that, and much more so than the like, and here's my backstory, Well, Graham and James, did you guys have any thoughts as to who you were wanting to play or interested in playing? Oh, Graham has given us an opportunity to toast Mo, because I think you're muted in chat.
Sorry. James, you want to
go? No, I guess, I was hoping to be more of a Navy guy, but in a way that gives me the chance for Gani to be a frustrated Navy guy. You get it sort of by the way around there anyway. And anyway, I wasn't going to get a Gazelle class anyhow, so who cares? Or a Xanti-High Lightning, so maybe it doesn't matter.
How about you, Graham?
Certainly, Dane. I think it's worth. So I had no idea. I wanted it to emerge because I knew it could through the life pass system, and it's worth noting that Dane wasn't supposed to be a Marine. I wanted him to be a scout, and he failed. So he was going to be a scout. I didn't come in thinking I want to play a scout. I just thought I'll play some sort of spacey scout guy. And then I rolled up his homeworld. And what generated the homeworld, which I've got down as a sort of smog-clouded, sort of infested hell world, he wanted to get off the world. And so he thought about it. He dreamt of the stars and the scouts, and then I rolled it. And I failed the roll. So he got drafted. I didn't control that. The draft took Dane to the Marines. He wasn't going to be a Marine, and he saw no. and he's lower echelon. You know, he's SOC 5, 6 or something, and so he's working class, industrial person who just wanted to get off world, and he ended up. And then as you go through the life path, so okay, he was a Marine, fair enough, he's got no chance, you know, he did a lot of guard duty, you know, so it was about as glamorous as he thought it was going to be. And then he got to the point where he wanted to escape from the Marines, and even then it was random, because he didn't escape the way that he wanted to escape. I wanted just a clean, well, I'll just stop, thanks. No, I got promoted. I got promoted twice at the end. I didn't want to get promoted. He didn't want to get promoted, and he got promoted to captain. Then he got promoted to force commander, and he got pushed and pushed over the edge, really. And all that came in 2-3 hours of chucking dice and weaving a story.
Yeah.
And that's so absolutely fantastic. And so I came out with something, but it wasn't what I went in with.
Yeah, and that's what we're, you know, the system, you have to, I think, have the, not only like the come into it with a mindset that, you know, you're going to see someone emerge, like you can have an idea of who you want to play, but the times where we've had bad times with the character and system is when someone wants to play like, oh, I'm going to play a psychic, you know, whatever, you know, and then it's like, well, we'll just have to see how that comes out, because it's just not what the system is designed to do. And then also, if you just have shitty dice, you know, we in the war story that we not war story, the gaming marathon session that we played, my son, who is a very accommodating player, his character got nothing but shit on every single roll. So he just, everything that could go wrong for that character did go wrong, and like other characters were having great results and like really exciting things, and anything that could go wrong did go wrong for his character. So like, you definitely can hit a point of like, you know, maybe we should try again. Let's just let this character retire and go on.
I will volunteer him for the Marine Assault Forces and and dive into a burning sun.
Exactly. So I can see where like both it's not. I think like I agree with you, Jeff, completely. That there's, especially if you use it with a light touch, there's great value to even just going through the process to think collaboratively of how these characters came together, because of those unanticipated connections and ways that you can think of like, oh, I didn't even think about this being a possibility. But I think that no character had everything but sunshine in their life too. Like everyone had some setbacks or whatnot, and. You know, playing this game, we rolled up our characters when I'm, you know, in my mid to late 40s, as opposed to the first couple times I played when I was in my like late teens or early 20s. Having the perspective that comes with having lived more life too, I think, makes you reflect on the path these characters go through in a different way. You know, I think that I'm enjoying the game and the characters the characters that come out of this, the people that come out of the character gen system, in a way that I would not have when I was in my 20s, when I was a fucking dumbass. Or let me rephrase that, in a different kind of dumbass. Do you guys feel
that was I think that's a great point, because I think, the way everything came together and why we're where we are in the Trojan Reach in the Borderlands is because of bad luck and happenstance, right? It just, and it works really great together. I think before to echo your point, like when I was younger, I want Dane's character, I want to be Dane Laverick, but the way I plan it, right? Not the way Graham rolled it up, which is like crazy luck, right? It's like I want to be a space marine with the battle dress and all that kind of stuff, and you want to be the superhero. And I think with the perspective of being older, it's like, well, you know, sometimes those pitfalls can lead to some really fantastic opportunities. So I think it's a really interesting perspective there. You know, you just like, you know, the way it came together, and that's that was a great idea. And I kind of stole that idea to kind of have to roll in my campaign for Traveler, to roll all the characters as best as possible together. Or if they weren't together, then at least I invited the other players to come and and sit in on the character creation session because of scheduling. And I think that was a better way to do it, because then they're like, oh, this happened to me at this time. Let's build that together. And there are ways to do that. They give you mechanics to do that in the Mongoose 2 rules. But it's so much better if the players just kind of come up with it instead of rolling it randomly on the dice, and just kind of contribute to the story. And I think that was a great session. Even character creation is such a great session. So much depth that we provided, I guess, for the campaign and for our characters.
So we've talked about the game as written, because we didn't start using house rules until I think the actual first session we played. First session, second session. After the first session is where we started doing XP. I can't remember if I had intended to do that beforehand, but the house rules we play with are experience, so characters get experience, and we're pretty much playing the way it's written in the companion for second edition. And we play with luck, which I don't know if that's written anywhere. I think I stole this from Hero 6th edition, maybe, or 5th edition. Whatever the most current version of Hero system is right now. Where you roll a d6 and you get that many points you can use to modify dice rolls from it. But apart from that, we're not playing with any other house rules. We're otherwise playing the game as written. Graham, you've been the one who's doing the heavy lifting on all the accounting for this. A year in now, how is the accounting holding up? Do you feel that is like there is an ebb and flow that when you're looking at it from a big picture, it matters, or?
Well, first of all, and it's a bit sad because in my real life, I was almost a chartered accountant, but I managed to escape just in time. Sorry, James. So it wasn't for me. But what is for me, I've always wanted to do the 5 loonies in a sort of free trader, zooming around, doing the trade thing. And so I'm getting to do it. I'm getting to do the spreadsheet as well. And the thing about Traveller is it's got half a dozen mini games, really strong mini games in it, where you can just have a lot of fun with sections of the game. You might want to design a ship, or you might want to do your trading. So although it's a spreadsheet, it's not that exciting. Sorry, James.
Are you using Excel?
No, I'm using Google Sheets.
Yeah, you see, that shows you are never going to be an accountant.
Exactly. I would have been one of those fly-by-night accountants, sort of like a management accountant or something, rather than a sort of proper,
That's how you go in, you see. You check somebody's laptop and they've got Google Sheets or something. You just say, get out of here, get out of here.
Yeah.
Give back your qualification.
Amateur. But yeah, it's great fun. One of the facets of it, though, is that we don't. It's difficult to get into speculative trading without a big capital outlay. So buying a speculative cargo to then go on and sell is a lot of money, and it's more money than we really have ever had. So we've done a lot of freight. We've done a lot of mail, and we can, by the look of it. We're playing it roughly right. I'm not paying anybody anything through the sheet, so we're not getting a salary out of it. But in terms of running a ship, keeping up with the payments on the ship, doing the maintenance, doing the berthing costs, doing the fuel, doing the life support, so your revenue costs on the ship, we can do all those and still make a bit of a profit. But to get the big money, as we discovered with the atomics, if you want to call it that, the radioactives, we had to get a bit of a leg up to be able to buy them, to then be able to sell them. And it's those sorts of opportunities which obviously come in with the narrative as well.
And let me just check my notes. Once you guys got that windfall, you wisely decided to invest it back into further investments. Is that what I'm saying? Oh, no. It appears that you blew it all like a teenager with their allowance on guns and
Lots of guns.
sandcasters.
Yeah.
Well, we were never going to be able to afford missiles. But it was too embarrassing. We're all turning up with not up to gunfights without even the knife. So.
Oh, the other thing we're playing with is Nat 1s. if you roll Snake Eyes. That's an optional roll where we treat that as something you can't spend luck on, and it's an auto fail. I can't remember if Snake Eyes is an auto fail rule in the game, but that is definitely something we're playing with. That is more Savage Worlds than it is Traveler.
Yeah.
But that's led to some fun outcomes.
Yeah.
So it might be on my side of the screen, but it has been fun for me.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm glad you introduced that into the game. So it's added like another little thread, sort of narrative thread that's run through the game. So it's been nice to have it.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing of that is so great about the game is that it's one of those things that I don't think has changed substantially, if at all, from the time of the first edition. So they just nailed it in the first go, and that provides the framework for exactly the kind of sandboxing that and justification for it that a lot of other, I think, games try to come up with cockamamie reasons for that stuff. And Traveler just has that right away. Well, why are you doing all this stuff? Why are you taking on these risks and whatnot? Well, because otherwise I can't fly my ship. Otherwise we can't repair shit. Like there's a really interesting and dynamic part of going around, and it's I don't know how much decision making you guys have been making on your end for like why to go to certain places, but I think your choices have been somewhat limited by the job that you're on right now. But it's cool seeing you do both kind of a mission based adventure while also indulging in a lot of these little side things that come up.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the adventure itself. So the adventure we were playing is Borderland Run, published in 2018. I can tell you that of all the adventures that came out or that have come out for Mongoose second edition, it's my favorite by a mile for a lot of reasons. I wanted to run this since it came out in PDF. So, because Mongoose always has the lead time between when PDF comes out and when the print comes out. And Mongoose is also awesome for giving both for the same price, which is great. Not every publisher, and like everyone's got their own reasons for pricing things the way they do. I do appreciate that Mongoose gives you the free PDF with the pre-order, which is, no, they give you a free PDF with the purchase, which is awesome. Because some places they link it only to pre-orders, and some things you got to still pay a little extra for the PDF and whatever. But in any event, I got distracted. Shocking in a game that we've played 66 hours, that's 42 pages long. The thing that always appealed to me about this was exactly what we've seen play out in this campaign is mission based. So there's a clear thing of like, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, and here's what might happen along the way. An NPC that I found really interesting as kind of the core part of that, which also gave you soft reasons for fleshing out the stuff about the Aslan without having to do an info dump. We have info dumps, but they're in smaller chunks than trying to swallow a horse or something like that. And it ties into some of my favorite bits of the region as well for where you're going. Like the fact that Drinax can be a place you can stop off. I would say that of the NPCs I've been able to role play, that King Oleb is probably up there with one of my absolute favorites of all time. So having the excuse to introduce King Oleb into that, and while we had that structure, when I first read it, I thought, okay, but there's also lots of opportunity to fill stuff in, along the way. And I didn't have any plans for how I was going to do that, but it's one of those games where, because in the course of play where people are going and what they're going to be, like what planet they'll be on and whatnot, you can flag opportunities to introduce things or just see what happens in the adventure. So like Ultima 1 is not part of the adventure. It's a neat character, a neat thing I read about in one of the books, and I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to throw in, and then sort of toss it in without planning too far ahead. And it also had an opportunity to tie in one of Dr. Ilias's backstory things, because I think in previous campaigns where I thought of what the backstories are and the contacts and the enemies or whatnot, I thought of them as like objective things that are out there, that if you go to those places, you can do that. And I think the more the more interesting way of dealing with it is to think of them as these are the things that are going to appear on screen. So if you've got something that is an enemy or an ally or some other complication or a contact, having those show up in the course of the actual campaign, that's what those are intended to do. And maybe I missed something that might be more expressly set and I just didn't read it. We call that the C7 rule, all the important bits at the end of the paragraph. So I may very well have missed it, but it's a good lesson I've learned in the course of actually running this campaign. Did any of you guys, I don't think any of you guys had read the adventure before playing it, right? No?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just something on the luck rule while we sort of just a reflection on it. Travelers are fairly sort of pass-fail kind of system, so it's fairly yes/no. Fairly okay. You've got the effect being affected by a particularly good roll, sometimes by a bad roll, but it is kind of pass-fail. I think for me, one of the benefits of the luck rule is less us being able to succeed at things per se, but more by spending just a couple of points to get a success. It's actually probably just helped the narrative flow of the session just that little bit better. It's flowed a little bit more because when it's an important thing, we could do with actually progressing a little bit. Put a couple of points of luck, bang, you're on to the next thing, and it's helped with the story flow a little bit. So it's not really so much, do I succeed or fail? A little bit of that, but actually it's how it ties and helps the narrative flow just that little bit smoother. I think, James, you've got a point there.
Agreed, because if you play MGT 2E out the or any of the Travelers of the 2D6 ones, if you don't have the extra experience rules, and if you don't have the luck, your guys are a little bit naff at what they do. And they've got big gaps in their abilities. Like, none of us had recon, so we're just walking into walls and stuff like that. And couldn't find our own underpants in the morning. So I think having these extra things on have softened that a bit.
Yeah,
well, we can get things done.
Folks have who are adverse to playing with narrative metacurrencies in their games. I've seen comments of it's playing in easy mode or it's playing in whatever else stuff. And the thing that's missed on that is that it's really a GM tool. I think is that it by giving the players the opportunity to get around what we call Jeff rolls at times, that really helps. But it also lends especially if you're playing with a type of narrative metacurrency that refreshes at the start of each session, it lends a tempo to the session as well as you spend those resources. That is, I think, really exciting. The games, in particular for Savage Worlds, just because of the way bennies not only give you the rerolls, it's also the thing that you use to soak hits and whatnot. And if you don't have that, combat is really fucking scary. And that's not quite the same degree in this because you don't have contested attack rolls, but it does. I think if you're having to spend those narrative metacurrencies earlier on in the session, like in any other game that has, action points or bennies or whatever the fuck they're called, it adds that feeling of stakes going up because you're getting closer and closer, just like, I don't know how the fuck this is going to work out. And I really like that from a GM side too, because it makes it a lot easier to leave sessions with it really feeling more tense and exciting than it might otherwise be, not just because you don't have those resources anymore, but because you did have them at one point and you blew through them.
Right.
Yeah,
I do like the resource management aspect of it too, and I have enjoyed using the luck points. I think I agree. It pushes the story forward. GM, we're all GMs here, I believe, and we want to tell a story, and you don't want a roll to sort of derail everything. It's fun for the occasional double one that comes up, because we've thrown that in there. It makes for a sticky situation, but I think because those are far and few between, right? Then it's like, you can have luck up to a point, and then fate takes over, right? And I think I really enjoy the luck mechanic, and I'm glad that we have implemented the Traveler Companion XP roll to echo James, because just right, you want to see progression, and then if not, then you have to really do a lot of space trucking, right? To do the only, as rules as written, the only way you can improve is through like training. So you spend your jump space studying, right? So you study for your
University of
securities
Space
license.
Phoenix.
Yeah. So I'm glad we've implemented that. It gives a feeling of progression. And actually, for some players out there, not having a feeling of progression is a deal breaker. And I guess original Traveler was like, well, you're accumulating money and stuff, but then you don't feel your character goes anywhere. You're just accumulating money and stuff.
I think it's just particularly also a challenge with if you're not that competent, because like if you've got something like Star Trek Adventures, you don't progress really, but it's okay because you're very good at stuff, so you don't need to. Whereas in Traveler, Raw, you're just a little bit naff, and you can say that it's easy mode, but it's just not that much fun for the players, be it relentlessly failing if you've just got bad dice. And frustrating for the GM as well. The whole thing just keeps derailing every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, I played like some Cepheus Engine stuff where it is kind of harsh and hostile. The players do get frustrated, and the campaign ends. For me, it's ended relatively quickly. Oh, we did one adventure, but I don't like this game because we can't do anything. Like if we run into a conflict, we're all that's no fun. We're all screwed. So I think you want to, and if you're not competent in some areas, well then you can train. One person's not always going to have the spotlight in a particular situation because everyone else is going to train each other, which I think is really good. I mean, we do have places I think in this campaign so far where players have shined really well, but I think still no one feels like, I don't think anyone feels left out because we've been able to increase our competencies. And we feel like we're progressing, right? Not just in the story, but as characters, right?
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
I think also feel with the luck mechanic, there's a role-playing element to it when we decide whether to spend it or not. Like I like to think about maybe my character fails here because of the state of mind they're in or what just happened. It's not just like, I want to succeed, I'm going to spend some luck. And we always get everyone's consent before we spend the luck. So it's more of a, what's important story-wise, what's important to the group, what's important to me as a character, rather than just a mechanical, I'm off by 2 points. Throw 2 points at it. And sometimes we've had lots of luck and sometimes we've had barely any luck. So I like that element that it adds to it.
Mm-hmm. Graham, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just going to grow.
No. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was gonna mention something because Graham had talked about it earlier, and before we move on. But I think what's cool about Traveler with all these subsystems to me is I have players who are not outspoken, don't really get into the role playing, but they totally, and that's what is cool about Traveler. They totally get into the space truck and the trading. They totally get into the starship design.
Yeah.
They love looking at the Traveler map that's online and going, oh, is this the next planet we're going to? What fun things are there? So like there's different things for different players to do if they're not into like the role playing part of it, or the exploration. They like the accounting part of it. So I think that's really cool. And then there's some players who, like I remember in one of my Mega Traveler campaigns, especially after we got that GDW book, Fire, Fusion, and Steel, he's just making guns all the time. People get into that and like that sort of, behind the curtain, stuff. So I think that's really, it's such a it's been a well thought out system, and all these modules really help engage players who have different styles of play or get enjoyment from different things that are going on in the game.
Yeah, and I think that it's something to, like, someone had said about the reason, like, say, Call of Cthulhu works so well is because there's just not, you're not going to your character sheet very often. Like, it does a good job of you overlook whatever mechanical deficiencies there might be in the game in comparison to more elaborate modern games or other more, complex games, largely because you don't need to be, to engage in the mechanics of the game so much. There's the world, there's the investigation you're doing, and whatever. There's a bit of a problem with that one in the same way there is in this, where you're going to be going back to, there's certain things that are gated behind certain roles, and in the most recent edition they've tried to get beyond that with the pushing rolls and other things. But the simplicity of the system is what allows the game experience to feel much more satisfying, right? At least that's the what I've heard people talk about, the benefits of using that versus something that's a more elaborate, horror system. I think there's an element of that that's true about Traveler as well, where you're not going to be finding like interesting ways of theory crafting your character. You're not going to find ways of like maximizing a feat combo or things, and like all that stuff is great, and there's reasons I love certain games for that stuff. Traveler doesn't have that on offer, which means you're finding other ways to engage with and enjoy the game, and part of that I think is all those systems you guys are talking about in the world. This is why we got one player, and I don't think it's a matter of like, oh god, I got to find some way to enjoy the game, so I'm going to shop for my man cave in this fictitious world. It's that, oh, it's just kind of cool to think about this stuff. It's ways of enjoying the fiction in a manner that isn't like ascribed by the rules per se, and because the system doesn't tell you specific ways of how to engage with your character and how to develop your character, then you're free to kind of figure out how that works best for the group and the table and the adventure.
I think one of the sort of defining features of the game for me has been the way that as we've told the story, it's been nice to see how the characters have gelled and cross-communicated, and with the NPCs as well, of course, and just some of the just straight role play, really. So there's all the mechanical stuff of us getting slightly more skilled and being able to progress the story, but I've really enjoyed the sort of banter, the cross communication, the situations that have brought play out. So that's something that I've really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think each of your characters has had to struggle with, meaningful decisions beyond like, do I buy this? Do I attack this? Do I whatever, right? Like everyone's had interesting things about their characters come up. And I'd love to take, credit for that. But as I think some of what it's going to say on my tombstone is I'd rather be lucky than smart. And that is absolutely the case here, where there's been shit that's happened. It's like, okay, this worked out nicely. Let's see what happens here. And you're absolutely right, Graham. Like the interplay of the characters and the relationships that I've built between the characters is also so interesting. They feel like credible co-workers in a tight environment. Like given more time on screen, I can imagine how these characters would become fast friends, and maybe you're viewing them as that right now, but to me it still feels like everyone has kind of their own thing, and we're slowly seeing a common goal come together. But I still feel like it's that great, like, boy, I really like the people I work with kind of vibe, more so than like, these are my family and my friends. And that to me feels like a more organic and natural connection between the characters than, the kind of found family that you sometimes, I don't know, like players want to protect other players, so when shitty things happen to their character, sometimes it feels like there's overreaching in some other campaigns of like, like I get that you really care about this guy, but you work together for 2 fucking weeks. So like, yeah, it sucks that he got chewed up by a giant centipede, but I'm pretty sure you're going to forget his name in 3 months, whereas this does feel like a more substantive, like it's the way that close working co-workers or co-owners in a small business do become family. Which is my long way of justifying the pace at which I run this campaign. So, we were talking before we went on to, because I don't, as regular viewers of the channel may know, like I don't really, unless there's an express sort of endpoint to a campaign, and I guess I don't talk about this on the channel necessarily, but like I rarely will launch a game or an adventure or whatnot with a clear endpoint in mind for it. There are certain times that is a bad fucking plan sometimes, because it means that sometimes due to circumstances totally beyond your control, the campaign cannot end, or you can't bring it to a resolution. We've had that happen in a couple of things, but because I so much enjoy the kind of development that comes over these long-term games, I prefer to see. It's a saying I use in my day job. People always ask, well, how long is discovery going to take? How long is this file going to take? How long is whatever, how long is this lawsuit going to take? And my answer is always, it's as long as a piece of string. It's as long as it needs to be, and that's always been my perspective on these campaigns that don't have a fixed end to them. Like, we'll know when it's over, which is a bad thing. Like, that is not a good way to run every campaign, particularly with people who have fixed commitments and other things that go on. But for this game, we're building towards something, and lay the groundwork for something beyond the adventure. But this adventure in particular, as far as the pacing and the development and the connections with the characters, and particularly the NPC, like, obviously, everyone has played a role-playing game before, so you're aware of what character you're supposed to care about in the game. Now that you guys have got the full four corners of what Tila Toral's circumstances are, but I really love how that played out over the course of the campaign. A younger Kev would have much more heavily leaned on, like, boy, you really should care about this character, and I intentionally did not do that in this. I just let you guys get to know him over the course of the campaign, and we had plenty of time to do that because we had things come up on every planet. And none of you guys, everybody was perfectly satisfied to take the time that was needed on each planet, and that gave us the time and the distance to have those connections feel substantive and, credible. It's a 4-month period you're spending with this person, and anybody who has been at like any other kind of like work thing or summer camp thing or whatnot, where if you can have connections that develop with people over the course of a weekend, imagine what happens when you're caught in close environs for 4 months, traveling with this person at arguably one of the worst points in their life. It's just an element of the campaign that has played out in my mind even better than I had hoped it would when I read the adventure, because I'm like, this is so fucking cool of a way of making, because I think it's easy to see the Aslan in the setup of the Trojan Reach and in the way that, like, generally speaking, you play Imperial characters in it, so it's easy to view them as the enemy. This is such a fucking great adventure for viewing them as like, oh, there's so much more us than we realize,
Yeah. So kind of interpreting that, so what you're saying a little bit is although the Borderlands Run has got a final point, or at least some sort of resolution to that particular arc that is building to, at least for the crew and for this game, this is going to perhaps continue on beyond that and into other things in this portion of charted space.
I think there is a crew willing, and that is a safe bet. Yeah, because
I was shocked when someone commented, "Since you're almost done with them," I'm like, what? We're almost done with them?
Yeah.
I was like, what? But we just started. No, I mean, because I think it's really an engaging campaign, and you've thrown in so many different hooks too. We are just through random encounter or what we run into on the course of our journey. That's what Traveler is great about, is like hitting these different islands and going on a tangent. And I mean, it's happened in numerous campaigns of mine with Traveler, and this has opened doors for continuing the campaign. And that's kind of what, I mean, yes, you have this adventure in mind, but it's still kind of very much a sandbox, which I think is a great balance to me on how to run a game, like where you have a big map and you don't know what's at that destination. So I think it's been really amazing to see how this has progressed. And now so that's why when I saw that comment, I was like, wow.
Yeah. No, because I think I didn't title the campaign as the Borderland Run, right? So like it was titled as if that, and I think that I mean, there are people who will pick a module and run a module, right? And then that's the thing. I'm physically incapable of doing that, as is evident by the many. Our 5-year Night Below campaign that has not got out of the first book yet, of the 3 that are in the official thing. Like, it's just the things that interest me as a GM and largely seeing where the players go, but it's also a matter of seeing what the players respond to and building on that stuff. And that's what this campaign has been a lot of fun. One of my favorite things that's happened in this, when you guys decided to go and rescue that kidnapped person, I thought that we were done with that. I was like, I rolled it up randomly as a thing. I laid it before you, and then it seemed like we're going to go off. And then it was a single comment from Dane. It was just like, this is kind of sticking in my craw. And everyone sort of cascaded to the like, that's kind of pissing me off too. And having the crew members to be the sort of, Greek chorus or the, second guessing thing is just awesome. I'd rather be lucky than smart. Ultima 1 has been a terrific addition to the crew because I get to have that kind of, I can interject myself into things that I feel need to be considered by the crew in a way that doesn't feel like me just shepherding you guys along. And that was that in that case, I didn't put the thumb on the scale, as it were. It was just a real natural of like, guys, I don't think we can let this stand. And that was great. Like, that was such a fun fucking adventure. And it also did not end in a fight, which is the
that
thing.
went so smoothly. That was probably one of my favorite. That's my Emmy award-winning, Emmy-nominated set of series of sessions. It could have ended very badly, but it just went very smooth. But I think it was the whole build-up to it was like, we land in this place, we need to keep a low profile. We run into this situation, and we just couldn't stomach it. I think as a crew, we decided then we're the big damn heroes.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something about it. So come hell or high water. So I think that was a fantastic series of sessions. I think one of my favorite, for calling on favorites. There's a lot of amazing events, and there's the cliffhanger we left on last time is going to make it even more crazy. But I think that was, so far, that's been like the Emmy award-winning like mini series or set of story arc, I guess. Right in the sessions.
And that was, again, all player driven. Like, it's one of the great things about the sandbox stuff is just setting it out in front of them. Make sure it's interesting for, like, it's not to say that there's no work for the GM in that. It's got to be interesting ones, and there's got to be ways of sort of, I think the NPCs helps it to a degree for when if you can give the players NPCs that they're going to like, dislike, feel ambivalent about, or whatever, and to have some complexity to them. Like your assigned liaison for the intercessor too. I don't think you guys really liked her at first because she was a bit of a pain in the ass. But then once you sort of, I think, got to know her, it felt like by the end of the adventure you were like, okay, no, I understand why she's this way now and why she's this way with Off-Worlders, and you guys ended up leaving on fairly good terms with her. And that stuff felt like, it felt earned in a way that, if I had pre-scripted the way things were going to play out, I don't think it would have come even close to how well it played out at the table.
Yeah, I think it was nice to have some things off camera as well. Just rather than on. yeah, it was really good. I think we've had a few sessions. I loved watching Dr. Ilias squirm in front of royalty as he tried to sort of guide us through what was an equally dangerous situation, but in a very different kind of a way. We had a lot of sessions where we got spotlight moving around different characters and showing up people, and I think that's it's been a defining aspect of the campaign, actually.
Yeah, I think I agree. I really enjoyed the character moments, like between different characters, or just these group discussions. Like everyone else, that when we all went like, "Wait, you're right. We shouldn't just leave now." That's sort of other things that we didn't like. That was really good. We also really like Tilitoral, because I think it's been interesting to get as someone who's completely new to Traveler, and Aslan were just like, space lions, it's like Twilight Imperium. But so they feel alien to me, not just because I don't know that much about Traveler, but because the way they think, and I think you're doing a great job portraying that.
No, thanks.
Where Dr. Ilias, it just goes, what? But to them it makes perfect sense because they just think differently. So I think it's been a great getting to know Tilatoral and finding out more about what he's been going through, and just the whole Aslan society and culture has been really interesting as a player and for my character to just go like, oh, hold on a moment, there's more going on here, and he's much more of a tragic character than just some, another royalty thing that we have to deliver somewhere. So it's been, that's been really great.
It's another happy coincidence of having at hand other royals to sort of compare him to, because because you guys have at least run into Princess Rao, who certainly is different than Tilatoral, and I don't know if you guys have run into any other Aslan that aren't directly related to him. I love the in fiction running jokes as well too, like with Tilatoral assuming that you're an espionage master, on account of like it's an amazing role. It's such a great for a hack DM who likes to like call back to jokes that worked before. It's such a great thing to go back to. If every time something happens in the circumstances where he could interpret it as you being the one behind the scene, and he's like, yep. That all makes sense. What have been your favorite moments with other characters? Whether they're, because you guys have sort of opened the door for that, for other members of the crew.
I think for Dr. Ilias, it's checking up on Dane. Is for him is sort of an important aspect of this journey. And he's sort of rooting for the guy and really hoping. So the recent development of Dane having a goal in mind, I think was a pleasant turn for Dr. Ilias. So that's probably one of my favorite sort of things for Dr. Ilias compared to his interaction with the rest of the party.
Must be a lot of fun, actually. Yeah, just bringing that in and sort of bringing your medical expertise, as it were, and sort of riffing off that a little bit. It's been fun. I think for me, it's probably been because I think Dane's character story might be very much strongly personally bound now to Tilatoral, looking like he's going to act as a second in a duel, and so he's preparing for that. And I think it's been that progression from, as you were saying, David, sort of like a big lion man to a more fleshed out Aslan who thinks different, who you try to get into his head a little bit to empathize with him, to try and move things along in the direction we want. And that sort of journey of getting to know him during our journey has been really good fun, actually. And occasional things happen, like when he threw a tantrum, and I think it was me and Alonso Dane and Alonso had to go and sort of calm him down. I mean, it's things like that, like we're still trying to work him out a little bit, and it's been fun uncovering what he's trying to do and why he's got himself into the position that he has.
When notwithstanding my comment earlier about it's great that you can make the game what you want, and you can your version of Traveler can be different from anyone else's. Having those resources to look at, like, this is how Aslan culture functions, or how they do names or whatever, is an amazing resource. Like, having that deep well of lore stuff to dive into and incorporate as I feel is appropriate has been great, because the aliens in Traveler are incredibly well thought out as being really different. It feels more like you're dealing, or at least hopefully it feels like you're dealing with more with aliens who are sentient, who you will have some commonalities with, as opposed to people wearing funny makeup, And I don't mean to undercut other settings that don't have that thing, but like, I don't know if I appreciably know the difference between a Rhodian and a Twi'lek and a Wookiee. A Wookiee, I guess I do, because you can't understand them. But species and the aliens in Traveler feel distinctly inhuman in a way that is, or at least there's the resources available in the setting to play that stuff up in a way that it isn't necessarily true in other settings.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, they make them alien to the point that they even have different stats sometimes, right? So, right, like with Varger and Droin, for example, just their society works totally weird, and then you get even stranger when you go the other direction of the Imperium where we are at with militant herbivores and starfish people, or starfish creatures. They're not even people.
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre, and I think they've done the way they've developed aliens and Traveler over the years has been pretty neat. I think to answer your question, I was going to say I think the development of Alonso's psychic abilities, sonic abilities, it's been pretty cool journey to see, because it's like we want to have that sonic character. Actually, I remember this like one episode of Buck Rogers a long time ago. Buck Rogers, the one with Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray, but they had this like team of like mental villains, and like, oh, that's kind of how Psionics in my mind works. But it's kind of neat to see this, how we're incorporating Psionics in this game in a sort of low level but growing. And it's just been pretty fun to see for me Alonso's journey along that, because it's right. It's like, are we going to be hunted if we go back to the Imperium? Are we being hunted now? I mean, there's all that in the back of our minds. It's kind of like if we play like our characters as Imperial Navy persons, we're like, oh, is he a Jodani spy? Things like that you get thrown into your conspiracy and propaganda Rolodex. But I think it's been really cool to see how this is developing. So I wish you could put experience points, Jeff, into his psionic abilities.
I did.
There you go.
Yeah, Kevin approved that. I
right.
did spend them. So
yes, that'd be fun to see if it actually, one of these days it actually works.
Yeah, and again, that was just. Oh yeah, go ahead. Finish.
No, I just kind of like a funny but not in a silly way. It's just like just the way it's not like overpowering. It's not like Warhammer 40K psionics where a Psyker can just blow up a whole platoon of people. But it's very subtle. I really like seeing it develop. I really do.
Yeah, it's mild.
Yeah,
which makes it interesting for sure. I agree.
And can I just ask what's wrong with blowing up an entire platoon with your scion?
James has, as of recently, disabled an entire monastery full of gene stealers with his ability. So there is definitely a place for
librarian.
that.
Oh yes, a librarian with their yeah. Yes, we've heard those stories. So the other Space Marines are having a smoke, the librarian does everything. Yeah, I got it.
He was a sanctioned psyker in this case, actually, so he was very brittle, but very, very potent. What about you, James or Jeff? Any moments with other characters that stand out for you in the past year?
Carl kind of took my one in the best possible way. So, what else? Watching Dane slowly reveal himself as a complete psychopath. That's been one as well. Waiting till he finally goes and massacres something completely out of control. And it's.
I guess you missed that. That was off camera.
Yeah, that moment. Well, and the way you played the consequences of that too, like I really, again, in keeping with the idea of these are human beings, I really love that it wasn't something that Dane just did and it was like, nah, it's nothing. Like there was a cost to that. Yeah, and it felt very credible and very, I don't know, like it's mental health and reactions to stress is a very difficult thing to incorporate in a role-playing game in a credible way without trivializing it necessarily or catastrophizing it. And having a character who is functional but struggling feels very real, and feels very real sci-fi in the same way that my horrific, kidnapped women story as being the thing that sold, Traveler to me. That's the thing that makes this this kind of setting really interesting to me, and when these kind of characters is seeing those kinds of the clash of values and having to deal with the personal consequences of your actions. I
think that's right. Yeah. It's consequences, isn't it? And I think if it had been our teenage Traveler selves, it would have been a gun fest.
Oh my God! I would have spent half an hour describing every single fucking gruesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that and it's a fine balance, because you have to get that balance between it being a game and as you say, not trivializing anything, and you've got to be cautious about that.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that these characters are people, and the events that take place will have an impact on them as people as we play them, makes it far more interesting.
Totally.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that I don't, and I don't know, like if I don't know what it is about Traveler, but I've given us or provided some thoughts on the mechanics and how they provide that space for the players to develop, but also it doesn't have the framework that I feel there's other games that try and capture that kind of natural character development and drama with formalized rules, and it just doesn't feel necessary. A big part of that is the players, obviously, because you guys are all experienced players and GMs, and you all lean towards. Before we started, I was talking about how it's great playing with other GMs, in part because I can just. Everyone has a feeling of the tempo of story, so when we're working towards the end of a session, if not having players who help me get towards that good cliffhanger or that good, break point, no one is putting up barriers in the way of that. But then that also speaks, I think, to the overall arc of the characters as well. And a game like this, by giving that space, but also giving a clear framework for a setting and other bigger things that are happening by planet hopping and whatnot, it just sets up the necessary framework. And I really mean that in the literal framework. There's just that loose, nice frame around which you can build the whole rest of the adventure and the story and whatever else. And it's amazing. I don't get this experience with any other role-playing game I run. Also, I so rarely get to make Fang Dragon jokes that have any kind of credibility to them in this game.
Fang Dragon, space. Fang Dragon.
We do have a Fang Dragon introduced in our Night Below campaign after 5 years, but now nobody wants to go see him because they're like, no. Except for Jeff. Jeff does want to go. Because there's a power payoff. Why don't we take our mid-session break right now, guys, and then we'll come back and turn to whether you guys have questions for one another or for me. And then we'll take a look at also in chat and see if there's any questions from anybody from there that we want to address on camera. So for those listening at home, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. All right. Let's see if there's any questions in chat here. Hi, everybody in chat. Hope you're having a great weekend. Let's see.
Oh, while you're looking through that, I was just going to point out the character, not necessarily a character moment that I really like, but a sort of series of character moments as a vignette, and that's sort of the Captain Ganny reacts. I feel like he always is like kind of stoic and stubborn and not wanting to get involved, or you know, he sees like what we're doing as like shenanigans and, you know, sort of standoffish, but then all of a sudden when he does get involved, you know, if there's a wild animal on the ship or there's a, you know, a spy on board and he's got to grab his shotgun, or it's just always just this interesting moment where he always feels really hyper competent to me and like, oh, I'll just go take care of this. Let's give me my shotgun. There we go. This guy's done. Lock him up, guys. What are you doing? Like, why are you messing around with this guy on the ship? I always enjoy those moments of sort of Captain Ganny gets pushed to action. That's always fun.
Yeah. The reluctant curmudgeon.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So one question from chat was, what's happened to the ship's mascot? I think Lucy is doing well and undergoing training with Anchor still.
Yeah. I've got my animal handling up. We just gotta find a place to get her, you know, in the spotlight or something like that. I don't know.
One of my favorite tables that we've made use of is that one from issue 7 of the second edition Traveler's Adventure, the TAS Adventurer Journal, or whatever the fuck it's called. That's the one that has that A Week in Warp article, and we have made so much fucking hay out of that one table. For every one of the trips we roll on that, and anything that's sort of like an interesting wrinkle or whatnot, all of them, for the most part, they've all come from the actual that table, Lucy included. It's something that's, you know, I don't know if but it's worth putting a point on is how much great shit that the random tables can add in for this. Like, it really truly is the same strength that people tout about hex crawling for sandbox type games, of making use of randomness to add, you know, dynamism and whatnot to the campaign. Traveler has so many great resources for that, not only in second edition but in first edition, and also from what I understand in previous editions as well. Really is something from a GM's perspective. I really love that element of it, because there's always going to be combinations of things that I did not anticipate. So that was the only question we had from chat. Do you guys have any questions for each other?
I don't have a question per se, but just something I wanted to bring up and talk about, maybe get some reaction from the other players. But to me, my favorite part of this game, and it's not that the adventure isn't great and the stuff we're running into, but it is absolutely the cast of like this crew of spacefarers, and just sort of the differences between them. They're almost more like a family at this point that's sort of like together, because they don't necessarily have the same goals and plans for how this, you know, missions and stuff should be going. So it's very interesting. Like, I see Dane and Alonzo are like almost like polar opposites of the spectrum. Like, you know, Dane has all this life experience and danger and adventure and sort of doesn't want that anymore. And Alonzo has, like, you know, this life of wanting that adventure and doesn't really have the experience and sort of is seeking it out. And so they're like a real good polar opposite. And I see like Dr. Ilias and Ghani just sort of like want to run the ship and make money and sort of get to this maybe like point of retirement, or like, you know, they don't necessarily want the missions we're running to be so complicated and full of deep intrigue, whereas like Anchor is like looking for the conspiracy and wants every little mission we're doing, including carrying the mail, to be full of all this conspiracy and intrigue, and he's always sort of pulling Alonso into this idea. And so there's just all these like neat tensions just amongst who the characters are that is really fun to see play out as we go through these adventures and run into these different things. That's it. I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if anyone has, I don't know if I have a specific question for the others, but like, I don't know. That's for me, the real enjoyment I get out of this game is being a part of such a good cast of characters.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it'd be interesting to see as we get towards at least the conclusion of this story arc, how that plays out. And not just plays out in terms of how we finish it, or it finishes us, but what it means to our characters, what directions we take at that point or want to take, and what happens to the ship, and what happens to the business, as it were, and all the things that we've built. What does that sort of story crescendo piece mean for all of us and all of our characters? And it, as you say, it'll probably mean something a little bit different, quite possibly to each of them, because we're all slightly different. It's
something that I really enjoy about this, because we've talked about this before off camera, when we or off stream, I should say, when we've talked about what the next step is, and I love that each of the characters they have their own reasons for being here. Like, it feels very credible in the, like, this is not a necessarily we don't question in some of our other long-term campaigns whether the characters are going to stay together. You know, it's accepted that, like, well, we're on an adventure, we're going to continue on with this stuff and whatever. That doesn't necessarily feel the case here, where, you know, there may be circumstances or changes in opportunities that might speak to different people, where we might see changes in that, and that feels very true to life, right? Like, everything, not to get too zen on it, but like, nothing is permanent, right? Like, there's always a matter of, this is what makes moments like playing in these kinds of games and whatnot so fun and so special, is because you're capturing lightning in the bottle in a moment where everyone happens to be working together in one thing. And that's true so much about role-playing games in general, but also true about the crew, that this is a moment in their lives where they all happen to be finding themselves together, but they weren't together before, you know? And it's going to be really interesting to see where everyone goes over the course of these things, particularly given the attention you have now drawn from King Oleb, because that may speak to different priorities and different values among the crew, right? So. What are the rest of you? Any questions or comments for the other crew members?
Not a question as such, just because in chat someone mentions how much they enjoy when Alonso goes to buy cigars. It almost never goes smoothly, and always something interesting happens, which I also always enjoy. It's like, oh no, he's off.
That happens. That's how we got involved on that planet, right? The psychic event, the psychic event on Hilfer, and that led to all sorts of shenanigans.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one of our running jokes, right? Is that whenever Alonso goes to buy a cigar, it's going to be. I think I saw in chat someone made a joke about it being a roundabout way of castigating smoking or servicing the thing. It's like, this is why smoking is really unhealthy, is because you're going to get kidnapped by some girl, or you're going to get, psychically assaulted by an alien potentate. In the same way that my our Spires of Paradar campaign is a long-running criticism of capitalism in general, this campaign is a health service warning for smoking.
Then one question I do have for Jeff is, in a lot of games that I've sort of run or played in, when people went like for the psychic or happened to become psychic, there's that, oh, I'm going to be a good psychic or it powerful. How do you feel about being a psychic, but not to quote the intercessor's assistant, but not the best psychic in the sector? Is that sort of mostly fun, a little bit annoying, or just something interesting to explore?
I mean, personally, I like that. I like that he's not extremely powerful, because it's fun to go through the world and sort of have this, dangerous thing to his character that isn't all upside. Like, it isn't just, a pure advantage. So I do like that. I think that it's interesting. I am going to continue to maybe put a few points in there. So maybe at some point it will be helpful to us. Like, maybe that eventually there'll be some roles where it becomes something that is exciting and interesting that way. And so maybe there's some cool payoff there where, carrying this burden for a while might actually result in something. Psychic characters in games can feel like cheating a little bit. I think that we kind of mentioned that before, where they, like, some games they're very overpowered, or, not just like cheaty, but like to read another character's thoughts directly or something, kind of like pulls away from some of the fun role playing of a game, at least for me. So I like that it's light touch of psychic powers. I do like that. And again, I was going to point this out when we mentioned his psychic powers before, but again, this was like a throwaway thing during character creation. Like, I never planned to make a psychic. I just, when I was rolling on the random life thing during that one investigation that he did, he, rolled up randomly that he had psychic powers. And so, character creation took us here and introduced this interesting aspect for our game. So I do like that.
Well, I like that it took us this long. It took us 8 months, 9 months before that really played a significant role in in your character's story as well. So it's something that's fun about these sandbox games is that we don't need to front load everything, right? We don't need to know all your backstory right away. We got plenty of time to get to the interesting bits and trust that it'll pay off and it'll be significant when we get there. Dealing with, was it Dr. Bancroft? Your thing was another thing that was a lot of fun to... I initially thought, am I just like shoehorning this too much? By being too on the nose with like, oh, and of course it's the guy that you used to work with, but like, I'm so glad I did that, because otherwise it's just like a little tidbit that's scratched on your character sheet, right? Like, having this in there and having him as part of the actual story now, so much more interesting than if it was just sitting there, waiting for you to go to X world and then you run into him again.
I'm very glad he came up like that. It was an interesting sort of like or Dr. Ilias, who had put it in the past, and then suddenly being confronted with it again and having to think about it, and then also for the character having to make decisions at the end. I think Dr. Ilias was maybe slightly tempted to set the cryostasis to not wake up or to malfunction, but then because that's just not who he is, he decided against that, but he had to think about it and be confronted by it. Yeah, and that's who Dane is,
What, Dane? He is the first person on camera to shoot Dane and live. Because he did sort him with that laser pistol.
I don't know. I suspect he has been shot. I suspect he has been shot a few times.
Oh yeah, off camera, no doubt. Next session, oh boy.
Yeah.
That reminds me of our other Jitico. Running jokes available at the ready. Like, that has been a fun part of the campaign for me, is having them constantly as the lurking threat, or at least a lurking presence in there. And Dr. Bancroft was a happy way of tying that in, along with what's his name? This is something building on Dr. Bancroft, but in particular with Ultima 1. There's such a thing as cramming too much shit into a campaign to just overwhelm it with what is this thing about? But there's also something to be said of not waiting, not saving for stuff, because I read about Ultima 1 in the Robot Handbook, and I made some modifications to sort of his backstory, but I read about it, I'm like, wow, what a fucking cool character, what a cool thing to go in. And rather than being like, oh, I'm going to plan it for the big introduction and whatever else, just to have it dropped in like that, it has been such a happy, not coincidence, because it wasn't a coincidence, but like the benefits of having that character added in are so much bigger than I could have anticipated. And the way that you guys have managed to work him in, as he's a great resource to draw on when you need to draw on him, but also he can't just go out and be better than anyone at what you guys can do. Because Jitico is like, Jitico, we're getting him back. They're going to want him back because he was being held and studied by Dr. Bancroft, right? So there's also kind of an in-fiction way of not having him overshadow you guys.
Yeah, I think that's worked really well so far in terms of him being very helpful and useful, but not going like, oh, I'll just do it all myself, step away. This is my show now, so that's been good.
I mean, there was that one post-credits thing we had at the end of one session. I'm sure that's nothing, though. Yeah, I'm sure that's nothing. There's nothing to concern yourself about the exotic, seemingly alien-built robot. I almost said Xenos-built. James, this speaks how much 40K I've been reading lately. What about any other questions or comments about the other characters?
Again, as a general, I like that we take the time to have these sort of group moments where we just have like dinner together or discuss things that they feel very natural, like that would happen on a ship. If you were working and traveling together, it wouldn't just be everyone doing their thing or just going out for the action scenes, but there would be this sort of downtime, just having a meal together, talking.
A lot of that comes down to the players. I think that one of the nice things with this campaign was because we started off with that slow build of like, in fiction you guys were team building, but also as players you were team building, and then we did that thing where there was the whole story of you traveling to Argona rather than like leaping right into stuff. Not every table's gonna enjoy that or want to engage in that stuff, but I think that really has been another happy outcome that wasn't planned, of just you guys really fill that time up with interesting things that either drive your characters forward or develop the relationships or give me things I can draw on and be like, ooh, that's a thread I can pull. And it speaks to the willingness to let just the scenes or the characters, develop, give them the room for that, and they'll fill out the space with that stuff. That's probably a lesson I learned from the man cave on the one of like, you never know what players are going to be interested in doing, which makes for interesting, like when I'm thinking of what's going to happen in a session, we're playing a module that's got a spine to it too, but I'm thinking of things of like more in ways of like scenes than I am in terms of like, stages in an adventure. And you guys are the ones who are making interesting things of that time and that space that I'm affording, or the opportunities with the random encounters and things like that. And every now and then I get to do a silly NPC, so that's great too.
I really enjoyed the trip to Argona with the saboteur on board and the whole who's the culprit. That was great.
Oh, it was fun too. Like it was had a nice way to introduce a lot of elements about the setting and like the things to expect from the area, and that folks will be. I don't know. I love spending time in this world with these characters. It's so much fun. I rarely have to work hard to find you guys ways to get yourselves in trouble. So it's great stuff. What are the if you were to think forward to your characters, and I don't mean necessarily in a meta narrative of like what do you want to see happen in the campaign, but what are your characters planning towards? What do you think these characters would be thinking at the outcome? Obviously, things are seemingly coming to a head, and you guys have found yourself more wrapped up in the life of Tila Toro and his fate than you expected when you're setting up this journey. But what are the characters, where are their heads at right now?
So, I think Dane. I think Dane sees his future potentially at Tila Toro's side. So I think rather than necessarily going on with the ship, I mean Dane doesn't know if he's going to live to survive the sort of duel, but if that goes well, and please say we roll lots of luck on that particular session, I think he sees his possibly his usefulness might continue working for, I'm hoping, a revitalized Aslan clan with Tila Toro, and to act as presumably some sort of useful human liaison. Mm-hmm. Kind of, or an even military tactician. And actually, I think, Dane's not been able to escape his past, so maybe he should embrace a different future with the Aslan.
Well, one interesting thing to think of, too, is that while he is a noble, even best case scenario, like he manages to resolve the assumed honor stain and he's able to demonstrate that he was betrayed in some other dishonorable way, he will remain an Ihate, which means he needs to go out and prove himself.
Yeah.
So there still is potential. Yeah. However, this speaks to another strength of the campaign is there's not a clear and then things are over. It really sets up for great future potential, regardless of how things work out. So that's very. That's very good to know for Dane as well. What about the rest of you guys? I know Alonzo is planning an extended stay on the Drenaxi golf course for the immediate future.
Yeah, I might be not around for a bit, that's for sure. But I think that Alonso's just looking for more adventure, and so I think he's sort of willing to go in any direction that the crew takes, as long as it's not, retirement or, settling down to farm or something, right? Like he's pretty easygoing as far as looking for adventure is a very broad stroke of a brush, but I think it really, in this case, suits the character, and it's just what he's after, just the next idea for a novel, or the adrenaline rush of the adventures we go on is big for him.
Mm-hmm. What about the captain, Dr. Elias, or Anchor?
I mean, Anchor's gonna go with the ship. I think he's invested. He likes the ship. I think in his mind, this is like a tugboat, and now we're improving it. Maybe it can amount to something, so he can be, a great pilot known for his piloting. So he stays where the ship goes, but that could be in a number of directions, right? We've set up a lot of things. I think he's definitely loyal to Captain Ghani and the crew, whoever that crew may be.
It's worth this because you mentioned something. The thing that another thing's worth respecting about the strength of Traveler is how well the economy ties in with the ship economy as well. Our Rogue Trader game is a shit ton of fun, but the link between your activities and developing your ship further is really tenuous, and the rules aren't. I mean, I don't think they're very good, but they're not anywhere close to, even on a more generous assessment of those, they're not near as elegant as what they are in this. And I really, really like that the rules are dependable in this, that you could calculate, if we get a bigger ship, you're going to be able to figure out how to crew that thing, you know? And what the expenses are and what the opportunities that'll come with it. I think that the ship components, while it is largely serving as a setting for us in many cases, like you guys have only been in one firefight, and you really, that was a matter of running. It's definitely something that is an omnipresent part of this kind of Traveler campaign, and the rules do such a good job of supporting that. What about the Doctor or the Captain?
I think for Dr. Ilias, there's a short-term and a long-term plan or idea. Short-term is prevent Teletoril from getting killed. So he's very much hoping that that's sort of doctor-patient thing of helping people. And then long-term, I think...
He jumps out with a giant plasma cannon. Hippocrates the Ghost, motherfucker!
Well, he might have, given what will possibly happen next session, he might have to change his pacifist ways. But I think long-term, he's probably, because he spent so much time and effort essentially wasting billions on one person or one family, and now that he's traveled, he's seen that there's so many better ways and so many more people that need help and access to medical care and all of that. He's probably looking at how can he help more people and actually put his knowledge and skills to much better use and making one pharaonic line live for another 1,000 years and that sort of nonsense. So he's probably looking at that, but also obviously wanting to study Ultimo or learn from Ultimo 1 and see how that can fit into it all. And so that's sort of his two. And of course, for a player, I'm working on getting to utter the line, "Damn it, Gani, I'm a doctor, not a..."
Exactly.
This campaign.
We didn't mention it, but I really do enjoy Dr. Ilias's Culture Vulture bent as well too. That's been a really fun opportunity to add in a whole different kind of part of whatever place you guys have gone to that we don't typically. You know, I think that it's natural to think of most adventurers as being like kind of, you know, rugged, salt of the earth. They're going to go to the dive bar and they're going to do whatever else. And it's kind of fun that Ilias is like, guys, I'm going to go to the opera. So I'll see you. Dr. Ilias's naivete too has been kind of in respect to certain aspects of the, like, you know, Traveler's life too has been like when what was his name? Owen Tian managed to get the virus on his comm unit. Awesome.
Also, it's still some healthy paranoia.
Yeah, exactly. And what about Captain Gani?
Oh, he's going to still try to keep improving the ship. And improving his commercial skills, I think, is his next goal. He's a pretty good engineer.
Is he satisfied with the vessel he has, or does he want something that, like, does he have ambitions towards something more grand?
More gazelle-like, you mean?
As an example for...
Well, yeah, I guess he feels a little, while he's proud of the Rift Wanderer and all the rest of it, it's still not exactly a Navy man's wet dream, as it were.
Yeah.
So
you're a car guy who's driving a Civic hatchback.
Stuff. Exactly. And, you know, he likes to make sure the Civic's in good condition and all the rest of it, and won't have it criticised, but secretly, you know, it ain't a Navy ship.
Yeah.
So he'll always, you know, no matter what happens with King Oleb and all the rest of it, deep down he's a Navy man. So if things conflict with that, you know, there'll be trouble.
So, do you guys have any questions for me? We've talked a bit before we went online about that. Well, a couple things, and then I've tried to address those during the stream as well. I guess for folks at home too, does anyone have questions for me as well? Yeah, totally. LSD says that the crew's coming together like the crew in of the Serenity and Firefly. I agree. Like it's something. It says a lot that game is supposed to be based on the creator's experience with Traveler in college. You know, it feels very much like that with this, where the disparate characters have come together and have those shared values and shared interests and whatnot.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I guess one question I have is this version of Traveler playing out the way you thought it would for this adventure? Or are there moments where you think, Mega Traveler or Traveler TNE or one of the others would handle certain scenes better or differently? Or
yeah, I really like so mechanically speaking, for Traveler Second Edition, I really love it. I think that the thing I like is not only does this game have that kind of the mechanical architecture for doing things like skill challenges, where like everyone is involved and everyone's getting a chance to roll dice and play to their character's strengths and add to the narrative by by doing that. It's got that sort of margin of success thing that most games now would, have incorporated some degree or another. But I really like that it's got that in there, and the task chain as well. The task chain is a really clever mechanic, because what can happen with those ones where you're just dealing with degrees of success is one really great roll can just decide the thing. Cubicle 7 has in their A Life Well Lived product, they've got a similar thing, and one of the ways they get around that is that they've got these for downtime activities. You make 3 rolls, and you have to make those 3 rolls, and you can't ever go below 0 with it. But if you don't meet the target number, you actually lose space in it. So that way, if someone rolls an at 20 the first time and you get 15 out of 8 that you needed for it, or whatever the hell the massive leg ahead you get. I really like the task chain as a way of giving some benefit and recognizing progress and making characters' involvements meaningful, but not like, oh well, so and so made the successful roll here. Why am I going to bother? I'm not really going to bother with this, or I'll just forgo rolling altogether for it. The development, I'm glad to see you guys are shoring up areas where you felt that your characters were weak. I completely agree with everything you guys have said about the luck stuff. I just, I do like leaving stuff to chance. I do like engaging with dice mechanics. Like I don't subscribe, to the idea necessarily of if it doesn't, you want to try and only roll in the most dire of circumstances. It's why I sometimes have less than optimal outcomes with the Year Zero engine, because I roll dice in that I think more often than I should. And this, I don't know, that luck, I think balances that component of it. And I like letting the dice decide things sometimes, as evident by the random encounters and whatnot. It's very easy to modify as well. Oh, sorry, Graham, were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, on that basis, just sort of tagging into that you like the dice to decide. What point in the campaign did you think, TPK? Was there one, or was there a point where you thought, oh, really?
No, we haven't. The stakes, I don't know if there's been a point where you guys I've necessarily thought you're going to die, because you guys you're playing characters, you're playing them as if they are people who have lives that can be lost. Nothing that whenever there's a risk of violence in this, it feels like you are acting in a way that is credible to people who have a sense of threat, as opposed to now we're entering a combat encounter. you know, and all the violence has felt organic in this. As much as I like running, you know, I love combat in a lot of games, and I love a good combat system. And have I mentioned Elder Scrolls role-playing game yet today? Because I feel like I'm contractually obligated for the non-contractual game. I love, like, that's a game I fucking love combat and that stuff, but in my mind, it's still combat and violence in any RPG is a means. It's not an end, right? Necessarily. There are games where that is just a good part of that story, but in this one, you guys have, so when you have had to indulge in violence, you're not doing it lightly, and you're doing it with exceptional training, and I really like that. And the thing because the game doesn't have that developed, you know, like, and here's how you balance a combat encounter, and here's how you do whatever, I don't feel the need to write stuff that way. I don't feel like, oh, and now we're going to have the combat part of it, and now we're going to have the whatever else. It's just like, it all is part of the same overall unfolding story, where I don't need, like, what would be interesting to the adventure to having Dane make stealth rolls going in to do whatever his, you know, midnight's work it was on Hilfer. I don't think there was anything interesting to come from that. So apart from potentially a combat encounter, and why do we need that for that? Isn't it cool? Like, you guys already had run the risk of running that stuff, so it was just much more interesting to see him deal with it, and then Graham carried on with some great role playing to have consequence from that. So it's not like that stuff was trivialized. It still had weight to it. In the same way of getting, not to pick on Dane again, but getting shot in the chest by a gun. It's the first time any of you guys got shot. You know, and seeing, like, okay, well, so there was an effect, but not a permanent, you know, thing. I don't think there's been a, even when you guys were running, I felt that you guys had it you had it under control to be able to get away from the pirates who were chasing you. Ship-to-ship combat is probably, like, when you guys get into a proper thing, that's where it's going to be dicey, because, like, any game like this, any game that has ship-to-ship combat, what am I talking about? Any game, they do not have a, like, you know, a mechanic where you're like, oh, well, you're just, you know, you're only, they think you're dead, but you're not actually dead. Like, when you see that blossom of light in space, you kind of know what's happened to everybody. One way around that, though, I guess, is both in this game and in Rogue Trader, is each of those rounds takes 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So that's when you guys are scrambling to the life pods and whatever else. So even then, I can tell you that I'm less concerned about TPKs in this, because combat isn't as much of a part of it. The thing I absolutely love is seeing the directions that you guys go with it. You know, I'm never happiest than when I'm having to think on my feet in a game. That doesn't mean I don't want to under prepare for stuff, because I have a job to do here. So I want to make sure I'm giving you guys a cohesive play experience that is, you know, holds together over the long term. But I really love when unexpected stuff comes up, or when you guys go in directions. Genuinely, my favorite moment was when I thought we were going to finish up on Hilfer, and I was starting to get ready to prep for Drinax, and then you guys decided, you had that moment at the bar where you're like, you know, so great. Like, and it's I think that moment is the most notable and an easily identifiable point of it. But there's so many other bits where you guys have done things that felt appropriate for the characters, and have taken things in directions that I did not necessarily anticipate. And learning as a GM to just be like, okay, let's see what happens next. You know, you guys were able to resolve the murder thing. Like, what's his name wasn't able to get up whatever plot he had, he wasn't able to get it sufficiently in place in the time he had. And if I was running another game, I might have felt that I would have shortchanged you guys. But in this game, that's the way things played out, and it was fine, you know. And that's true of so many parts of this game, where learning to just go with what's happened. I didn't, you know, I can't remember how that Dane and Tila Toril ended up in that, like, mock combat thing. But, like, I remember that it was player driven. It wasn't me putting the thumb on the scale of, like, now I'm going to set you guys up with this. And you could just see it happening in front of you. You're like, I could not have asked for this to play out better than what I'm doing. So one of the lessons I think from this one is, take your time. For me going forward is take your time, which I always do in these games anyway. But in particular, on each destination, allowing for the players to spend as much time on those places as they feel is necessary. With a game like Traveler where they can pick up and go elsewhere, where you guys can go elsewhere, it's important to be planning for that eventuality. If the players choose not to pursue whatever thing is going on, you need to be okay with like, all right, well, now we're going to go and do this thing, so I want to be prepped for that. But it's been great. Every place we've gone, we've had something, in my mind, interesting happen, whether it's Alonzo getting mugged or... you guys finding out about these bounty hunters or gosh, what else has happened, or the infestation of Lucy on the ship, or the saboteur that was on there. It's all been just great stuff, and it's given me as a GM so much stuff to work with and to manage stuff on or bounce stuff on the fly, which again I just fucking love doing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the point that I was most worried was the starship combat.
Yeah, and this is where I think the luck definitely will play a role in that, because one of the things about Traveler that is just something you got to accept is you can't dodge, right? Like you can dodge to affect the chances of someone else, but if someone else has hot dice, you don't get to escape that. We haven't seen a lot of combat in this, and I think everyone's going to be cautiously approaching that going in. But I think if there was a circumstance where you guys did go guns blazing in, knowing these characters, like we wouldn't suddenly be playing, an arcade shoot 'em up. You would still be playing these characters as themselves, so they would be approaching it with the same measured and prepared way that you would other things.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I was just going to say I'm looking forward to the next session, to seeing how the combat rules play out in that sort of scene, because obviously compared to a lot of other games, it is very much more one hit. Someone like Dr. Ilias can be quite serious.
It's
going to be interesting to see.
Does he have armor whatsoever?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, a bit of armor.
That goes a long way. Like you don't start taking penalties to significant skills until after you lose all your your vigor or your endurance. Once you lose endurance, then you start losing dex and strength, and that's what starts turfing some of your combat skills. But there isn't a death spiral in the game, and I really like that quite a bit, because the death spirals can have a place, definitely. But if it just means you're shittier at the game, which is really what it boils down to, it doesn't matter how realistic or how whatever. It's just that every game, if it's adequately designed, is designed towards a certain level of balance. And if you're just completely fucking that balance up, the further you get towards death, the less fun it is for some players. Some players are fine with it, but for some players, it's just like, I can't possibly succeed in this. Luck, our use of luck is one of the ways that would mitigate that, definitely. But we also, I don't think we've been playing with you actually penalize. No one's really been hurt that badly in this game, so what am I talking about? I don't know how we're doing damage in this yet. So, but I do like the Cepheus. One of the versions of Cepheus has that I can't remember. It's like trauma or something.
It's lifeblood and stamina.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I like that quite a bit. I don't like. We've been playing a fair bit of Starfinder in the last little bit as a war story in our Spires of Paradar campaign, and I really like that one. Worked out really nicely because the characters all had spacesuits on. That if they got ruptured, they would expose themselves to a magical virus that they would never be cured of. So the stamina points were kind of a nice measure of how badly injured they were in it, and no one had their spacesuit ruptured. Someone had their companion destroyed and eaten by a Jubsanuth, but these things happen. But that that was one of those games where with the stamina, because you could also in that game recover so quickly, that one almost felt trivial to me. Like unless you had a gauntlet of combat encounters that you're playing where you'd be wearing it down and letting him get it back and wearing it down and getting it back, it would feel like a lot of all or nothing in that game. And that's the only thing I would say with a stamina mechanic. I fear that there might be a trivializing of combat. I can't remember how it actually works for getting your stamina back in Cepheus, but it's something I noticed in Starfinder, and I contrast that with like Wrath and Glory that we played recently, where you do have a more easily recoverable mechanic, but it's gated behind a roll that is a determination roll that you can only apply the damage to that like more easily recoverable thing by making a successful roll with something. So it avoided the trivializing of combat the way that I think Starfinder does sometimes. But yeah. Any last questions or comments, guys? Our first year in the Trojan Reach. Well, one thing I'll say quickly, just to not chew up some more time, but because I like this campaign so much, and in answer to the question of whether the adventure played out the way I intended, way better than I could have anticipated. And I can't tell you how high my expectations were for this game going in. I absolutely adore the setup for this. I think it's such a great adventure. And the idea of having to transport this person and like only appreciating the risk of the thing you've brought on, like that's a great fucking twist in a campaign. And then having the connection to the character, it's just a really, really fun setup for a Traveler game in this region. And it's just played out even better than I could have hoped, because it does all the things I love about Module, where I've got a great and solid spine for what's going to go on, but it's so easy to add stuff in, and it's so easy to tweak stuff as needed. None of the planets are as fleshed out as what we've seen in each of the places, but that's what I want from a module for me to be engaged with it, is because if it is too fleshed out or if it is too clear of what's supposed to happen on the planet, I'm going to either forget or I'm going to just like indulge in, not anti-authoritarian, but like the contrarian tendencies and want to change it. So this campaign, the adventure itself is a rock solid. Who wrote this anyway? It was written by Martin J. Doherty. So Martin, really well done. And of course, edited by Matt Sprang, who is all things Traveler at Mongoose. But the adventure itself is great. It's even played out better than I could have hoped. I've so enjoyed this thing. And the fact that we're actually tying it into Pirates of Drinax, which I have loved for a long, long time. 5 years of waiting, 4 years since we started the campaign, but 5 years to this point since the game I was first exposed to the module to now, it absolutely lived up to the wait. I am really sorry what's going to happen to when you guys, come into your next session, of course. But that is always the case. Any other closing thoughts or comments or questions?
Just to say a big thank you to everyone. I'm loving this game. This is one of my favorite games that I'm currently have ever been in. So I'm looking very much forward to year 2 of the Traveler campaign and to see what is next for the Rift Wanderer and our crew.
Same here.
Yep, same.
I echo that sentiment.
Awesome. Oh yeah, double check in. Oh, thanks. Leslie's also kind words. Yeah, thanks very much. I will say there's been so many great members of the viewing audience as well too, who we consider part of the campaign. Like we don't have to stream these games or whatnot. No one gets rich on YouTube, So we do this because we enjoy engaging with the community, the wider community as well too. And there's been so many great people who've been interacting with us or providing, explanations. There are times in other games where I have folks, interjecting with lore or other things that are just annoying, to be honest. We're just trying to correct what's going on. I really appreciate that every bit of feedback we've got on this has been helpful stuff of like, hey, you can find the rules for this on this book here. or here's where I could find so and so, and that's been amazing for a game that is as fleshed out as this. That's really helpful to have that kind of feedback, particularly when it's in a constructive and useful way. Someone telling us that, like, well, actually, this thing is referred to as Y and whatever. Who gives a fuck? Like, it's a pretend world in a pretend setting in a pretend thing, and we've never had any of that from any of the folks who have been joining us on this voyage. So I really, really, really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments before we wrap up our session? Nada? Then, for those listening at home, thank you so much for joining us today and over the past year in our travels in the Trojan Reach. We will be back in 2 weeks' time to see what happens on the world, where our heroes have seemingly attracted some attention of the ballistic variety. But until then, as is always the case, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the session, the game, or the campaign we're playing, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will endeavor to reply in a timely fashion. There's also a link down below to the Dungeon Musings Discord server. We have a very active, relatively active channel dedicated to the Traveler Borderland Run campaign. We also talk about Traveler in general there. There's also a bunch of other channels for like finding a group or GM discussion or other just bullshitting. There's a great community that has built up over the years over there, and you are more than welcome to join us. There is also a link down below to our friends at Noble Knight Games. Noble Knight Games is the preeminent unionized retailer of hard-to-find and out-of-print RPGs in North America. Not only do they have a great selection of new role-playing games, board games, and card games, they have an unmatched selection of hard-to-find and out-of-print RPGs, including a ton of the versions of Traveler that we have mentioned thus far. I have had a couple of the adventures that Carl has mentioned from Mega Traveler sitting in my cart for a little while now, waiting for a bigger purchase. If they don't have in stock something that is listed in their catalog, you can put it on a want list and they will send you an email when it comes in. And if you're making a purchase of $10 or more through the website, be sure to enter the code MuserNight, all caps, all one word. It's in the description of the video, and you will save yourself 10% on your purchase. That'll be good until the end of June 2024, and then we'll have a new discount code come July. There's also a link down below to something called Heroes Save Villages, which is the charity fundraising campaign that we run on the channel. It benefits the SOS Children's Villages International Charity, a really incredible organization active in over 130 countries, benefiting over 80,000 orphaned and abandoned children. We have more information about the thanks that we're offering to donors through the Charity Initiatives channel. But right now, we have voting going on for our 2 Star Wars charity sessions we'll be playing on May 4th. We'll be celebrating May the 4th with 2 sessions that the donors will have voted on. We are just wrapping up today voting on what villains our heroes will face, but donors who have donated $25 or more since January 1st, 2024 have been casting votes on what era we're setting it in, what types of heroes we're playing, and now what villains they're facing. Starting later tonight, voting will be opening for what game we will be playing, and one of those options is Star Wars Traveler. Based on the Mongoose publishing thing, there's some terrific house rules that I think it's Bill Roper who put together that adapt the Mongoose Traveler rules to Star Wars. So that'll be one of the RPGs we'll have on offer, including as well the West End Games version, the Saga edition, and then a couple other fan-made ones like the Savage Star Wars and my 2D20 version that I ran a couple years ago. And I'll put something else up that'll be a kludge one because, why make things easy? If you donated $25 or more since the start of the year, be sure to head on over and cast your vote for which of those. And then for the second half of the year, starting in July, we'll be running our same type of chess sessions we ran last year, where donors will be voting on what era, what kinds of characters, and what kind of game we're playing. And I got a fun twist for this year that will hopefully be interesting and a way of saying thank you to the generous donors. All donations through that link go directly to SOS Children's Villages International. None of it comes to the channel or any other middleman. It just goes to benefit the kids who benefit from their services. The last thing I will say is an enormous thank you to all of our stalwart travelers. So, James, Graham, David, Jeffrey, and Carl, thank you so much for joining me today and over the past year and 4 months. So, thank you very much, guys. This has been an enormous amount of fun. I cannot wait to see what comes in the second year, and I am really sorry for what's happening in 2 weeks' time. So,
We'll be fine. I trust the Marine.
if Jeff is not here in 2 weeks' time, we'll assume that he knew to run for cover. So
Those psychic powers.
exactly.
Exactly.
So then we'll be back in the Borderland region until no, we won't. We're in the Laiwaha sector right now. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, subsector. But until then, we hope that we gave you a few hours to take your mind off the troubles of our world and think about the troubles that our travelers have encountered and overcome, and the friends and enemies they've made along the way over the past year. And until we see you again, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy gaming.